guys, welcome to another channel episode. Remember, this is a channel where we talk about how you don't need to be a CEO in order to have some impact on the world. And remember that we are currently going through an experiment to try to get our Tensorflow certification as soon as possible. And in this video, just like my previous videos, I'm going to go all over technical aspects of what I learned, but also kind of study tips and things that helped me along the way. Now, as you guys know, I love to keep all my notes in Notion. I also have been using a template created by another YouTuber on Notion in order to kind of log what I've been learning along the way. Let me show you guys that. So here you go. Here I have my TensorFlow Developer Certified Curriculum that I've been using, and you can see in my logs right here that I've in the last week have done the week 3 in the TensorFlow course 2, and I've done week 4 on the TensorFlow course 2. Now, as you can see, I've now finished all of course 1 and all of course 2, which is awesome, and now I'm moving on to course 3. Now course 3 is going to be all about NLP. So far it's been all on convolutional neural networks, CNNs. Now we're going to move on to do a little bit of natural language processing. Okay, now let's go into the technical aspects of what I learned this week. Going into my notes, we can see here that I have now filled up week 3 and week 4 of the second course. Now the second course on week 3, we learned all about dropouts and transfer learning. And it was actually really interesting how dropouts actually function. So let me open that and talk about that. So right in my notes, I have that I learned all about model architecture and model weights, and then how to freeze layers and then only grab one convolution from each model, right? So like I should start off by saying that we are using a transfer learning technique where we grab someone else's pre-trained model and then freeze all the layers, and then I grab one convolution. So that's what I meant by that. So in this case, in these exercises, the professor made us grab only one convolution and use kind of only that convolution weights in order to improve on our own model. So we kind of had this kind of hybrid model, this transfer learning kind of situation happening. And so we learned all about how to do that. Now, what ended up happening there is we had to end up learning about dropouts because we ended up with models that were overtraining really, really fast. Now, what that basically means is that our training accuracy was going up really high into the 90s, while our validation accuracy wasn't climbing up anymore after that point. And so we learned all about using dropout, which kind of skips a couple of random connections in our neural network in order to make sure that our models don't learn the data, basically memorize the data by seeing it again and again and again. So a dropout is kind of like making the model forget some of the data and lose some of the connections. It works really well because neurons that kind of fire together are probably also really related. And so a dropout actually makes sure that neurons that fire together aren't always entirely correlated and cause, that overfitting to happen. So we learned all about, using transfer learning and using dropout in week 3. Now, something else I learned in week 3 was a little bit about how to program getting data in, some data pipeline things. I mentioned this before in week 1 and week 2. This course has been doing a kind of a good job of making us learn by ourselves the best way to do data pipeline of getting data, mainly images from folders or websites, into the correct folders that we then use, floater directory or image data generator in order to move into our model. So that's something that we learned in this in this as well. And so here you have kind of some proof. And so images of, well, both of these look like the same thing. They're probably from different um, training training models or different times, but both of these look pretty good. You can see how you get the training accuracy to go up and the validation accuracy also stays high. So moving down a little bit, I have a little bit of code that I saved here, again talking about that pipeline of how I get a zipped file, make training and validation directories, and do a little bit of, here I'm importing the inception model, version 3, and then I'm freezing all the layers and then only grabbing the mixed 7. So that's the layer, a convolutional layer in mixed 7. The way you learn about that is by doing the model summary. And then we learned all about, I'm just going through the code here, then we learned all about a different way, a different syntax way that's just as correct as our usual way of using, tensorflow.keras.layers dot dense, but instead here we do something called layers.dense, and then instead of using a sequential, you don't use sequential, instead you just pass the x next to it. I guess you multiply it times the x. It's an interesting, it's different syntax. It's still a little bit confusing to me, but I mean it's kind of, it's very similar. You do this in order to do transfer learning, but you can use it normally as well. So here you see that how you do x equals layers.flatten last output, and then you do x.layers.dense, and then the 124 neurons, the activation, and then you pass the x. So, and then you keep doing that. And then let's see, and that's kind of it for week 3. So it kind of very interesting week. And then in week 4, we actually ended up learning all about multi-class classification. So this was really fun. All it really taught us to do is change the loss function. You want to change the loss function from a binary cross entropy to something like a a categorical cross entropy. That's really all you need to do. You change that in the model.compile, and then you also want to change in the image data generator. You want to change the class mode from binary to categorical. That's when the data comes in, so it knows that there's multiple folders inside of your training folder. And I mean, that's really kind of it. Again, this week we also had a kind of an assignment that really focused on writing a function to get our data in, a data pipeline function. This one was called get data, and basically we had data that was coming from a CSV, and it was like rows of data, and we had to get those lines of pixels and make them into 28 by 28 images. So we had to use the NP array split to turn those 784 kind of, I guess you can say they were flattened already, in our models, how we use that dot flatten to make it kind of like this one row long array. So that's basically what they were trying to do, what we were trying to undo actually. And so we had a function that did that, and we wrote that, and I actually needed a little bit of help from the internet to learn about a couple of these things, and I was able to figure it out after some time. Then we actually had to change that from a string to a float. That took me a little bit of time to figure out when and where I should do that. And yeah, that's kind of that get data function. Really interesting, especially the whole ignoring the first line. That took me a while as well. So cool, that was that pipeline. And then we learned a little bit about expanding our dimensions, which is a unique function that I never used before. Kind of the typical thing of using image data generator, using some augmentation. Like I said here, you have to change the class mode to categorical, and then finally towards the end you had to change the categorical, usually it's binary cross entropy into categorical cross entropy. And here, for some reason that I'm not sure, we had to use sparse categorical cross entropy. The way I've been doing it so far is, if one doesn't work, if the shape of one doesn't work and I don't know why, I'll first try sparse and see if it works, and usually it works. So it's a very interesting kind of set of problems that occur between the sparse and non-sparse. I still don't know why. That's actually something that I should look up after this video. So kind of this is very meta, but thanks video for teaching me that I don't know that. And yeah, that's it for this week. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed my kind of review of what I learned this week. Again, if you guys enjoy this, let me know, and I'll see you next time.